I'm your host, Desi Arrup, and welcome to a special episode of On an Island. Normally, on the show, we discuss fun, lighthearted topics like being a kid, your favorite movies, music, and other fun stuff like that. Today is different. We take on a serious topic today, the shocking loss of English teacher, Mr. Beau Dagenais. I have three special guests today. Joining me are fellow English teachers, Mr. John Becker, Mr. Alex Barron, and Director of College Counseling, Ms. Cathy Badmington. Thank you all for being here on an island with me.
Thanks for having us, Des.
Of course. All of you knew Mr. Dodge really well and were really close to him. So I know this might be tough for you guys. Let's start with, how long did you know Mr. Dodge?
Just about 12 years.
So 13.
Yeah, since I started here 5 years ago. 5 years ago.
What is your favorite story or memory of Mr. Dodge, Ms. Badmington?
My favorite story is nothing I can tell on this video because of a broad range of watchers. So I won't do that one. But what I will say is that sort of a repeated story with Beau and me was after I would write my letter of recommendation for a student, I never read his first. I would write mine and then read his. And every year there'd be a couple kids. I'd go into his office. I'm like, this is amazing. You and I together described this kid and had some really fun crossover. So it's just a fun way for Beau and I to sort of connect about how we interact with kids, and that was fun.
Awesome.
I remember shortly after I came to BL, I was talking to Mr. Dodge, and I didn't know him very well yet, but I remember him commenting just kind of offhand about what he'd been reading. We were talking about books that we were reading because we're English teachers, and he was.
That's what you do.
That's what we do. And he said, "Oh yeah, I've been reading a lot of early 18th century English novels lately. Clarissa by Samuel Richardson, if you know, you know." And I'm like, "You've been reading a lot of 18th century novels, like as in more than one?" And I just thought, my goodness, this guy is well read. If I'm going to teach in the same department, I'm going to need to up my game. It was very intimidating, but it also, I think, brought out the best in me as a teacher.
Yeah, I remember when I first started here, Beau and I had some mutual friends from outside of Boys Latin, like from outside the community here. And they had told us both that we would have like a similar taste in music and that we loved music. So I remember one of the first times we hung out, he told me to send him a couple songs that I had been really into. So I sent him these three songs, felt really good about them. And that night he responded, and the only thing he says was, 0 for 3, hate all of them. And the story is such a perfect example of Beau's friendship, because I think what Beau always wanted was this like openness and like authenticity. And so the next day I came into school and I was feeling down, like, I'd just gotten these 3 songs rejected. Maybe Beau and I weren't going to be friends or whatever it was. And he had written notes on each of the 3 songs that I sent him. And then had given me a playlist of his own of like 5 or 6 songs that he thought would be a connection between my taste in music and his. And to me, it's just so very Beau, because it was like, first you have to be yourself. And you have to encourage everyone else to be themselves, and then you find connection through that. It's not about like faking what you like or faking who you want to hang out with. It was about like being yourself and then finding that connection between two things. So that's my favorite story, because I think it exemplifies who Beau was as a human being.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So next question. How did Mr. Dodge affect our students? Mr. Becker, kick us off.
Oh, I'm starting that one off? Okay. Will you repeat the question, Des? Sorry.
How did Mr. Dodge affect our students as a whole, or maybe individuals?
I think everyone talks about Mr. Dodge as a teacher, and he was an incredible teacher, but to me, he was much more of like he was an inspirer. He made kids believe in themselves, and he made them believe that they were capable of doing what he was asking them to do. He made kids trust in their own abilities, and then also trust in him. But I think it all kind of went together. And in that way, he kind of created these memories that, a lot of the guys that I've talked to don't talk about English-specific things. They talk about how he made them feel. And I think it was because he inspired people. He made people believe that they were more than they thought that they were. And to me, that's like such a beautiful thing.
I think he also was a true academic. I think that knowledge and learning and reading very hard to read books was very much a part of who he was. And I think he introduced to kids this idea that thinking deeply about what they're learning was good and cool and fine. And I think that there are some kids who sort of were turned on to, sort of had their intellectual curiosity ignited, and he made that cool. I think that's a gift.
Beau really did instill in his students a love of literature. I mean, he made seniors in high school into lovers of Emily Dickinson, which is no easy feat. That's incredible to me. And Shakespeare, I remember observing his class do a scene from The Tempest, and they were getting into it. They were just like, you could just hear them down the hall, like belting out their lines. They were really into it. But aside from his academic contributions, I think Beau just modeled this brand of, I would call it non-toxic masculinity that I think played really well at this school. He made part of the culture that it was cool to share your feelings and cool to be vulnerable. It was cool to tell your friend that you loved him. We don't do that much as guys, and there was a lot of hugging in his class, and I think that's one of his many legacies here.
So kick us off with another one. Going off the legacy piece, what do you think Mr. Dodge's legacy was here? Anyone can start.
I think I'll go back to something that I heard many years ago from my grandfather. And as I thought about Beau and how do you sort of distill down to what his legacy was, I think it was broad, but my grandfather had a thing that said it was important that you listen, laugh, and applaud. And I think if you think of those three words, Beau did those. He listened well. He laughed hard and loud. His office is across the hall from me, very loud. And he applauded. He applauded students. And I think we all like to feel that we're appreciated and that we're doing well. And he applauded students across the board. He didn't pick and choose. And I think that if students are listened to, laughed with, and applauded, I think strength happens and growth happens.
Yeah, legacy is a tough one to think too much about. And I think, again, not to really I wouldn't want to put words or thoughts into Beau here, but it feels to me like Beau would want his legacy to go way beyond Boys Latin. I think what he was hoping to do and what he accomplished in so many kids is something that lasted much longer than the 12 months or 6 months they were in his class, however long they were in there. His hope was always that they would take whatever it is that they had learned about themselves or about literature or whatever it was, well beyond the senior year of high school. And hearing these stories since his passing of all these kids that left and what he instilled in them as like young men, in how they acted with other people and things that they pursued outside of school. I think that was Beau's legacy to me, was what he was able to do for young men well beyond their time in high school.
To me, part of Mr. Dodge's legacy was that the written word is not just something that you look at in class and then use to write an essay or something like that. This is something that can tell you how to live better, how to live a great life. When we read poetry, we're not just trying to get the meaning out of it so we can write a 5-paragraph essay, which was something that he hated, by the way, the 5-paragraph essay. Yeah. This is, these texts will instruct us, will help us they'll feed our soul, you know, and they'll help us to be better to each other.
All right, so while this show is called On an Island, we can safely say that Mr. Dodge never made his students feel like they were alone. How did he do that?
Well, one thing that always impressed me about Beau was that he remembered details about people, especially about his students. He remembered what sports teams they liked, or what bands they liked, or other details of their lives, and he had what shows they watched, sometimes like that. And he would have, it seemed like, little inside jokes with almost all of them. So they felt like they were close. They were close, and close to him as a teacher, but also valued members of his community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think what Beau was able to accomplish as a teacher is something that, you know, in terms of how he made his students feel, is something that we're all striving for. And I think it's something that if we knew the answer to how he did it, we would all be trying to do it, or we would all be doing it. So I don't know that I can answer that other than saying what I saw in his students, right? I don't necessarily know how he accomplished it, but I do know that every single kid that was in his class felt like they meant something to Beau, and felt like they were important to whatever was going on in that classroom. And I do think a lot of it, like Mr. Barron said, was about getting to know them outside of class, or outside of what the classroom expected, the expectations of a high school classroom. He wanted to know like who they were as people. And once he learned who they were as people, that was how he then got to them as a teacher, and impacted them as a teacher. But to answer the question, I don't know. You know, I wish I did, because I think I would be a much better teacher if I knew what Mr. Dodge knew. And I think it's you know, it's devastating that we don't all get to see that in action anymore. And I guess our hope is to keep that legacy going.
I think that one thing that made kids feel like they weren't on an island is going back to what I said about listening. And I think to truly listen and hear, and I think a lot of times as adults, we are listening to have kids fit into what we think they should be saying and should be thinking. And I think Beau listened. And I think for the most part, I mean, he wasn't perfect. Sometimes we have butted heads. But I think that he, especially with kids, grew. Like he knew that generations change, that kids change, that different fads would happen that kids were into, and he listened about that. So I think that it makes us all feel good when we are heard, and I think Beau did that well.
I would also just add that Beau was truly one of the most charismatic people I've ever met in my life. He just had this way of getting students into his orbit, getting them to follow him. I remember this activity that we were doing in the Gelston, like soon after I came here, and he was just, I don't even remember what the activity was, but he was surrounded by, like, it seemed like a cloud of students. And I was like, man, this guy is just the man at BL. Like he is just Mr. BL faculty member. He is truly like the cool teacher here.
Mm-hmm. So what's one thing what's one thing every new person at Boys Island should know about Mr. Dodge?
For a long period of time, Mr. Dodge was, like I said, he was the man at BL. He was that teacher that people remember. He was like Robin Williams from Dead Poets Society, only come to life. He was, I would joke with him sometimes, I would call him the face of the franchise, because he was like on every piece of Boys Latin promotional material for like 7 years straight. They marketed him, and for good reason. And students would come back and they'd want to talk about him. But he was a big part of life here for a long time.
I think what they should know, and part of his legacy will be just an extraordinary lover of words in every way. Words that you write, words that you read, and words that you use with one another. And I think that I think he would say that words matter in all those places. So I think that that's what I would want someone to know about Beau.
Yeah, something I think that's worth remembering and what everyone should know about Beau is that, like, while we've been talking about what he's been like at school and as a teacher, Beau was like the most incredible dad. You know, there were times where we would have plans either after school or on a Saturday, and I would get a text and he'd say, "Sorry, man, can't do it. Penny wants to go to Target," or Owen really wants to watch the highlights of the Tottenham game today, so I'm going to stay home and do that with Owen. Nothing was more important than Owen and Penny to him. And he found a way to give everything he had to his students and then also somehow have a little bit more to give at home. And he was just an exceptional dad, and never let anything else going on impact what he was going to do for his kids.
Mhm. How should we continue to celebrate him moving forward?
Let's continue to read a lot of poetry. Let's continue to ask the big questions. Let's continue to give hugs and tell the people in our lives how much they mean to us. And maybe once in a while, let's sign an email with XOXO, because that was kind of his trademark.
I think as a community, we need to just continue to celebrate knowledge and reading and curiosity and a love of music and just an intensity of passion for what you're studying and what you're appreciating right then, and never to shy away from passion that comes with that.
Yeah, I think it's also just important to remember to, like, we need to be ourselves, and find what we love and what we're passionate about and share it with people. And at the same time, encourage that in others. And once you learn someone's authentic self, find things that you can connect with them rather than looking for things that make you different. Look for what makes you similar to those people and jump head in on that, and just dive in and get to know people. Yeah, be curious.
All right, so that's it. If you guys want to say anything else, to add anything, now's the time.
No. Thanks, Desi. Love you, Beau.
Yeah. All right, I think I'm going to do the signing out thing. So,
Yep.
All right. Thank you to Mr. Barron, Mr. Becker, and Ms. Badmington for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Anytime.
of course. Thank you for watching this special episode of On an Island. To see a past episode, go to Boys Latin YouTube channel and search up On an Island. I'm your host, Desi Arrup, and see you next time.